Okay, let's just start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Great Masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. Beloved Master, beloved Swamiji, guide us as we stay in tune and produce the kind of community that you envisioned as an ideal model for the world. We offer ourselves into thy light. Receive us, bless us, and guide us. Om. Peace. Amen. Okay, we're going to have some music.
So we just found out we're going to be talking about how Swami worked with people. Well, still works with people. And so the suggestion from one of our friends was, I live without fear, because that was in response to a very difficult communication that he wrote that song. So, go ahead and move over a little closer. Yeah. Though green summer fade and winter draw near, my Lord, in your presence I live without fear. Through tempests, through snows, through turbulent tide, the touch of your hand is my strength and my guide. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave only thee, your love and your joy. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave only thee, your love and your joy. The dancers will pass, the singing must end. I welcome the darkness with you for my friend.
Someone suggested that we talk about how Swami worked with people. And it's a very good subject because it's not just how he worked with others, but also it shows how we should work with ourselves. And first of all, we'll start with the singers, since that was one of the ways that he worked with people. Swami was constantly creating ways for people to be involved because he saw very clearly that those people who put their energy in grew. The more they were involved, the more they gave, the more they would grow. In fact, one time he said that after we saw that some people were living, he said, it follows in this pattern.
Some people were leaving.
I thought you said living. Oh, maybe I did. People were leaving. Thank you. See, when you're on a short leash like this, you're helped along the way, same as Swami did with us. So people were leaving. Swami said the pattern goes like this. They quit putting out energy, and therefore their own energy begins to drop. And when their own energy begins to drop, they begin to get negative and critical, and they look outside of themselves for the problem, and then they start criticizing others, or criticizing, in this case, the community, or the way something is done, or decisions, and then they say, well, I can't in good conscience stay in a place like that, and off they go. And unfortunately, it's a pattern. So working with energy is one of the really important themes of what Swami did. The singers, as I started, is a very good example, because he would find ways for people to be able to be involved. When I first met him in San Francisco, not the first thing. First thing he said, hello, I'm Swami Kriyananda. The next thing he said was, I'm working on a project, would you like to help? And so right away, immediately, he was involving people, involving me in this case. Then when he had satsangs at his house, he had a big basket of instruments that he would pass out. So everybody had an instrument to play as well as chanting. And for me, because he wanted to make sure that I showed up all the time, he taught me some simple rhythms on the mridanga. And therefore, I was the mridanga player. And if I wasn't there, oh my God, what kind of a kirtan could we have without the mridanga? You've got to be here. And so, yes, of course, I would show up. I don't think it was really necessary in my case, but nonetheless, it is a principle. But the music, when he wrote it, it wasn't choir music. It was his songs, and he would sing it on his guitar, and then he would have a few other people sing the songs. But gradually, as more people were involved, he wrote harmonies for it. And that did two things. One, it involved people. But secondly, because everybody was doing the same thing and had to meld their energies with other people, it allowed, you can hardly think of a better symbol for cooperative communities than a well-tuned choir. Different parts, everybody doing their part, everybody in sync, everybody listening to each other. It's a perfect paradigm for working with people and getting people in tune. But that's the second thing, is that Swamiji, the theme of how Swami worked with people really follows perfectly on the theme for Inner Renewal Week, which is working with our Dharma, how to find and work with your Dharma. Because Swamiji always started from the principles. And for instance, when he first was put in charge of the monks at Self-Realization Fellowship, Master put him in charge of the monks. One of the very first things he did was to write a series of lessons that he worked with the monks, kind of guidelines for how to have a spiritual life. And he worked with, but he very, very often would pull back and work with the principles. So it all starts with Dharma. It all starts with attunement with Master. And so he would start with the principles, and in his case, because he was a writer and obviously a teacher, but as a writer, he would write out the principles. So he would write lessons. He wrote a couple of early books, but his first major book was 14 Steps to Perfect Joy, which became the Raja Yoga book, which has all of the principles of our path in it and the teaching. So he would lay out the principles, and he didn't so much work individually with people as he worked with people in groups. I think Master did the same thing. So in a talk like this, he would constantly be working with individuals who were listening, who were in the audience, but he wouldn't be addressing them personally. He'd be addressing them on an ideal level. And by doing that and being a little bit indirect about it, he could talk about the principles in such a way that you would get somebody to agree with the principle, even if their behavior pattern was the opposite of that. So if he was talking about, let's say, he knew that somebody had come and said that somebody was expressing a lot of anger. Swami wouldn't go and talk to that, generally speaking, I'm speaking in generalities, he wouldn't go and talk with that person directly. So let's say, since she never ever does it, that Devi Leela was expressing a lot of anger. So Swami, knowing that Devi Leela expressed a lot of anger, would be looking straight at Narayan and saying, you know, when we're working with people, we should be very careful to control our anger impulses. And Narayan would be thinking, what did I do? Of course, he doesn't have the problem with anger, but Swami was really talking to the person who did, and that person, because it was indirect, would be saying in their minds, yes, when we're working with people, we should not be angry. See, he was getting them to affirm the right attitude by being indirect. He would wait sometimes for years before he would talk to someone directly, because he knew that as long as the window was not open, he couldn't serve the food. You know, you'd go up to a drive-in, unless the window in your car is down, they can't give you the meal. And so Swami would sometimes wait for years, and it would drive the rest of us crazy, because there might be somebody who had a big problem with anger and was unleashing it and making it really uncomfortable for people. And for those who were on the receiving end, it wasn't enough for Swami to address that indirectly in a satsang. We wanted more direct action. Sometimes Swami would say, all right, let me talk with them. He'd invite them over to dinner. He'd serve them a nice dinner. He'd compliment them on how wonderful their spirit was, and he'd never touch the subject of anger, because he could see, one, that they weren't ready to hear that, and if he tried to introduce it too soon, they would just push back, and they'd say, it's not my problem, it's everybody else, and whatever it was. They would push back, and then when he wanted to really talk with them, they had already said no to his advice. So he would wait for their openness to arise, and the more open they were, the more direct he could be. And so with singers, for instance, as the singers began to put more and more energy into singing the songs, he would be very direct. He would correct, no, your pronunciation on that word is not right. You need to hold that vowel longer, and then don't slide off the end like that. Make it crisp, end it crisply. And he'd be very direct in that, but it was because he knew that the person was already moving along with him, and therefore he could work with that person. And Master, I think, was even more so that way, from what I've read and what I've heard, Master would give, just generally speaking, I mean, we hear and read sometimes where he was talking very directly with someone. And he did do that. As a guru, he needed to address things like that directly sometimes. But generally speaking, he would not say very much. And when he did say something, he would say it very lightly and one time. And he wouldn't keep nagging a person about it. It was as if he gave the advice to that soul, and it was up to that soul now to follow that advice. We've told this story before, but it bears repeating here. One time we were walking in the garden with Swami. Toward the end of his life, his exercise routine was to walk 3 times around the garden. And so we would go down at tea time, have tea, and then he would do his 3 laps around the garden. And so we were doing the 3 laps around the garden, and he just stopped. And he said, "Oh, that's what he meant." And started walking again. We said, "What, Swami? What were you referring to?" He said, "Oh, I was remembering a time." Now, this was 50 years after Master had left the body. So he was remembering back sometime longer than 50 years ago. He said, "Oh, I was just recalling a conversation that Master was having with another monk, and I was standing next to him, and he was giving the monk some advice, and in the middle of that, he raised his eyebrow just slightly." He said, "Oh, I remember that, and I realize now that raise of the eyebrow meant that he was giving that advice to me." See, Swami was constantly trying to tune in to the energy flow, the vibration, the subtlety of Master. Master, in fact, said, "I hate to correct people. I work best by just raising an eyebrow." And Swami was remembering that. So Master and Swami generally didn't nag people. They would give a piece of advice, generally softly, sometimes more forcefully, and if you were in tune enough, sometimes quite forcefully. Swami didn't correct Devi and I a large number of times, but once in a while he did correct us, and once in a while, out of those corrections, he corrected us very strongly. And Devi can tell her own stories about when he might have corrected her strongly. But one time he corrected me, especially, I think Devi was also there, but this was meant to me. I had started to tell him that I didn't think that a person could pull off a project that they were planning to do. In fact, I was quite certain that they couldn't pull off the project that they were planning to do. This person was kind of a dreamer and had just one of those people that had ideas and would start things and then just drop the ball and leave it to others. And so I started to tell Swamiji that I didn't think we should support this project of the community, put our energy behind it. And he said, "You should not act that way. You should not make those decisions. You have to let people do their own things and make their own mistakes." He said, "If you intervene, they won't learn their lessons." And as I say, that was one of the times he was quite strong with me. Wasn't angry. I didn't want that to come across as angry. Just strength. He wanted me to learn that lesson, and he was making sure that I heard him. And in fact, I was right and he was right. That person did not pull off the project. They dropped the ball. But they were working with another person who caught the ball midair and produced what is now Treasures Along the Path, one of the great projects of Ananda. But the person who had that original idea wasn't able to pull it off. But if I had intervened and said, no, let's not work with that project, look at what we would have lost. So Swamiji, the point here is that Swamiji would give softly advice, indirectly advice, and sometimes directly advice, but he didn't nag people, and he was quite willing to allow people to make their own mistakes. I started out by saying that Swamiji always first addressed the principles. And so, he wrote the 14 steps. He wrote the training manual for the monks at Self-Realization Fellowship. He wrote he wrote the guidelines for the Sevaka order. He wrote what else? He wrote leadership, supportive leadership. So very often he would think through the ideal, and then he would write a book about that, and then there would be something solid for people to refer to. Very, very early on, when the Ananda was still a twinkle in his eye, he had purchased the property, but there were no buildings on it. And he wanted to get some energy going. So in his apartment in San Francisco, he called a little meeting of about 8 or 10 people who were kind of involved enough so that they might be interested. And a couple of those people thought, oh, it'd be fun, I'll just bring some friends along and they can get to meet Swamiji. Well, Swamiji wanted to lay out the idea of starting a cooperative community, Ananda. And so he laid out his thoughts, and the meeting turned into a disaster, just a farce. People started saying, oh, people have tried that and it just doesn't work. In other words, I was up in Canada one place and there was a leader and he was a despot and it was a terrible thing. And it just turned into, as I say, a kind of a comedy, a farcical comedy. Well, Swami immediately realized not only was it the wrong group of people, but he had to put out his ideas much more clearly. So what was his response? It wasn't to try to correct those people. In fact, he often told us, don't work with negative people. The best you can do with negative people is to bring them to neutrality. And then with neutrality, they'll start running around in their minds and they'll go negative again. Work with positive people. Because you work with positive people, you'll magnetize a group energy, and then people will be drawn in, or they'll see clearly that it's not their place. So anyway, to finish the story, Swami's response was to come up and spend 2 weeks at the meditation retreat, because that's where the land was camping, and he wrote the book, Cooperative Communities, How to Start Them and Why, where he laid out the principles of what a community could be, so that people could read that ahead of time, get in mind what the vision was, and then he could work with an energy that was already moving. So he would first get energy moving and get it directed in an upward direction, get it aligned with Master and attuned with Master, and then kind of softly and gently allow ways for people to join their energies in with that. That was the primary way that he worked with people. Rarely did he push back or negate or really get strong. I can only remember less than I could count on my hands, the fingers of one hand, where he really got strong in a group. One time was at the beginning of Ananda, when there was a group of negative people that were kind of gathering steam. And Swami called a meeting and he said, either you listen to what I say about things that I feel are important, or I'm going to leave, and you can have this community. Everybody, of course, was shocked. And later, Swamiji, confided, he said, I carefully counted the number of votes in the room before I would say something like that, because I had no intention of leaving. But I wanted to put out that message really strongly. And the negative people, negativity can't hold together, so it drifts off. And that's what happened in this case. But rarely, the point here, rarely did Swamiji confront negativity. Rather, he empowered positive energy, positive solution energy, and he worked very strongly to get that going. And I'll just end by talking just a little bit about how he worked with people in a counseling situation. Devi and I, he would have us sit in with him on counseling sessions. So sometimes he would invite somebody, somebody would want to talk with him. And it would be at Crystal Hermitage, and he had his little apartment, and he would say to us, you'd better be here so you can show them the way out, as if somebody from Ananda needed to be shown the way out. But he just wanted us to be there and to listen and to observe how he worked with people. And he would let them speak, but not very much. If somebody wanted to go into how their parents treated them when they were 6 years old, and Swami just cut them off, because none of that was really very important. He didn't want them, especially he didn't want them kind of reinforcing their negative viewpoint that it was somebody else's mistake. He just kind of cut through and talked about, okay, what is the problem? Let's define the problem, and what are the solutions to that? And then he would give advice for that. And if people didn't take the advice, and it was very often that they didn't, that he just let it go. Devi and I would be shocked to use a actual experience. Somebody came and was interested in a marriage partner. And Swamiji said, listened carefully and said, that it was a man asking. Swami said, the woman is a very nice woman, but I don't think it would be good for you. I think she will draw you off the path. And the man, as we walked out, said, isn't that wonderful that Swami's supporting my relationship like that? He got married and left Ananda about 2 years later, or 5 years later, something. But Swami he worked with the energy flows, not so much the situation, but he would give that advice. Now, he never, once that relationship started, he never tried to go back and say, stop, I tried to block you from this. Just let it go. Let the karma play itself out, because if the karmic energy is moving that way, then it's almost as if you intercede in it, intercede in the karmic flow, you block the learning experience. And so all the masters work on these very long rhythms, and they work with the soul much more than they work with the personality. But of course, they take the personality into account. So I'm going to stop there. Devi will add some things, and then we'll have time for questions and answers.
So this is such a beautiful topic. I mean, we could spend a long, long time talking about it. And as I was thinking about it this afternoon, I think you all know we put out a voice message and something on Mighty Networks that Jyotish and I are pulling back from a lot of outward activities, and we're going to try to be writing more. We each have a book that we're working on. Jyotish is a little bit ahead of me in the project. But so we're only meeting with people and going to appointments, activities Monday and Wednesday afternoon, and we hope you understand that. But the book that I'll be working on is How Swamiji Fulfilled Master's Mission. That's not the title, but that's the theme. It's so many different areas. And then when I was thinking about this topic this afternoon, I thought, wow, that needs to be a chapter, how Swami and Master worked with people, because it's so important. So, you know, our beloved friend, Anandi, Nayaswami Anandi, wrote kind of a personal memoir, which she called Trained in Divine Love. And I thought that's the best title to describe how Swami worked with us. He trained us. Training is not a little thing. It isn't like, oh, you do whatever you want, guys. You know, training is discipline. It's giving you feedback when you need it, but always with divine love, always in a loving environment. And that's the essence of discipleship, really. How Swami worked with people, everything Jyotish described, working with principles, working lovingly, it's the essence of discipleship. And when people sometimes come and, well, I'll give an example particularly, and I didn't tell Jyotish I was going to use this example, and this might embarrass him because he's a humble person. But, you know, when I first came, I didn't know Jyotish, and it was so clear that he was implementing Swami's will for the community in developing it in those first years. And because there was this humility, but there was this, you could almost see the connection between Swamiji and Jyotish. And there was another man who was there in the early years. He was an older gentleman, not that old, but older than we were, probably in his 40s at the time. He had been a business manager before he came. And Swami was having him work with the finances. But the contrast between how Jyotish was working and how this other man was working was so dramatic and evident, because this other man, okay, I know business, I know management, I'm going to, you know, and he was leading with his ego, not with discipleship. And even if we have a background in something, if we lead with, oh, I know this, you know, I had an interesting, early on, it was a little thing, but boy, it made an impression on me. Before I came to Ananda, I was interested in Master's teachings, had read part of the autobiography, had gotten a few of the SRF lessons, but I didn't know how to meditate at all. I hadn't gotten any of the techniques. I hadn't really learned the philosophy. But one thing I had done in my life previously, I had always studied modern dance. Since a little girl, I was always in a dance class. So I was limber. And so then we're doing yoga postures. They were so easy for me. I could do any of them, and everybody else was struggling. I had done much more strenuous things than that in dance classes, but I wasn't getting what the yoga postures were about because I thought I knew. And so one time, very quietly, Swami said to a group, not looking at me, he said, you know, yoga postures are much deeper than just how limber you are. And I thought, ooh, he got me there. And then I started doing them differently. He said they're about the consciousness with which you do them. When you're doing modern dance exercises, there's no consciousness that you're doing it with. Just trying to get as limber as you can. And so it's important for all of us who come, whatever we think we know, throw it out the window and that's what discipleship is. Just to say, train me in what I need to learn. And it was another aspect that was so beautiful. Now, Jyotish said Swami led with principles, and he did. He was impersonal, basically. But see, that also reflects how Swami worked with Jyotish. With me, there were more personal things that happened. And he respected each one of our individual dharmas. So yes, he started a monastery, but he didn't tell everybody to join it. In fact, he told us to get married, Jyotish and me, to get married. And one time we were in India, and I said to him, we're talking about the topic of arranged marriages in India, and I kind of paused and I said, well, Swami, you kind of arranged our marriage. And he said, what do you mean kind of? I did arrange your marriage. But he respected our individuality, that was the way we would progress. And it wasn't just that if you want to find God, you have to, be a monk and do, and I'm not putting that down. If that's your dharma, absolutely. That's what you need to do with every ounce that you've got. But Swami respected our individuality. And at a certain point, and I've never told this story, I don't think Jyotish ever heard it either, but because it's just... But so we were married, and we hadn't decided if we wanted to have children or not, but a friend of mine who was married and had a new baby had gone over to visit Swamiji, and while she was there, she needed to change the baby's diaper, and so inadvertently she left behind the little plastic panties that you put on a baby's diaper. So then I get this note from Swamiji with the little plastic diaper panties, babies, with a little note clipped onto it, Devi, with a question mark. Like, what do you think? And, he was just saying, what's your dharma? There isn't just one way. And trained in divine love. He was loving us. He was acknowledging our needs, but always within a balance. Another time, because I was not a monastic, this was before we were married, the people close that were around Swami more were monastics, and I wasn't one of them. And we were somewhere, I think he invited a small group of us to go on a trip. And at a certain point, there were 2 or 3 of the nuns and me in the room with Swami. And they were with him all the time. And they were monopolizing the conversation. I was just sort of sitting there, and I couldn't get a word in. And it was the most amazing thing, because I just sighed. I wasn't like, but I just went, like that, because I was sad that I couldn't have a little personal exchange. With that sigh, he said, everyone leave the room, Devi, you give me a foot rub. Just like that. I mean, it was really astonishing to me that he picked up that little bit of, I need a little personal energy, Swami. And these other people get it all the time, and I don't ever get it, But then, to contrast that, Swami, I think we got to be around him a lot because we didn't talk much. We kept our mouths shut. We weren't plying him with questions all the time or anything. And he said to us once, he said, and this was towards the end of his life, he said, and I'm not saying this to brag, because this was the greatest compliment he ever gave us. He said, most everyone else has a few loose screws. You and Jyotish don't seem to have any loose screws. And that was probably the highest compliment he ever gave us. But, so then we were visiting him in Assisi. And we hadn't seen him for many months, and I was so looking forward to being with him and spending time with him. But he was very busy. And he was writing, and there were a lot of demands on his time, and he didn't have time to be with us. And rather, that other time when I was sort of longing, he said, oh, come, and everyone else leave. This time he did the opposite. He just wouldn't have us over. And then one time, because that's what I needed at that time. And he looked at me at a certain point, and he said, Devi, no one is special to me. I'm not even special to myself. And that's what I needed to hear in that moment. So he was always balancing, but it was and this is what, I mean, it's so great that the living disciples are here and that there's wonderful, our new generation is here. Just to always live in the spirit of discipleship, whatever you're doing, whatever it is, if it's big, if it's little, if it's important, if it's humble, it's all about discipleship. And when people ask the question, well, you all were trained by Swami, how do we carry on? What did Master say? When I am gone, only love can take my place. And so it wasn't, yes, Swami isn't in the physical body anymore, but we never knew Master. And yet how he has influenced our lives because we were wanting to take up discipleship and not think, well, I know, I've taught before, I know how to teach. No, you don't know anything until you open your heart up in discipleship. And then, bit by bit, you start to understand. And so, trained in divine love, respecting the individual, balancing being impersonal and personal. And people may think, oh, well, they were the favorites. Nobody was his favorite, really. I want you to understand that. His love was equal for everyone and for a stranger. And, you know, we've shared the story about Swamiji of when he was towards his end of his life, he was in India during this period, and his body was not cooperating well. And he had just flown over to India, and the plane flights were rough on him, as those of you who just flew back from India know. But so they found about a man who was a masseuse to come over and give Swami a massage. And so he did, and he was a young man. And Swami said, he just had Swami lie on his bed and he gave Swami a massage. And Swami said, wouldn't it be easier for you if you had a massage table? And the man very humbly said, well, yes, sir, it would. But you see, I have a wife and 2 children, and I work 2 jobs. This is only one of my jobs, and I don't have money to buy a massage table. And Swami said, first time he met the man, I'll buy a massage table for you. Here's some money. Next time you come, you bring them. And he gave the young man the money. He came back, and the next time, the man was crying. First time, Swami didn't know him, but divine love, he knew, he was. And the man said, you know, sir, I was an orphan. I grew up on the streets of Delhi. No one cared for me. I fought my way every step forward. I had to do it on my own. But the thing that I have prayed the most for in my life was to feel the love of a father. And in this act of yours, I feel like that prayer has been answered. And I don't think they saw the man much again, maybe a few times, but just that, the love, knowing that on some level that young man had never known the love of a father and being that father for him. And so how we carry forward into the future, it all rests in, as I said, discipleship. And what does that mean? It means reading what the principles that Swami has given us, trying to apply them in our lives, always deferring to the thought that you may not be right. There may be someone who can give you guidance, can give you help. And I love the quote, and I don't mean be dramatic about it, it's Master, when this I shall die, then shall I know who am I. And so essentially to look at ways that when you feel the ego kind of getting all fluffy, just say, no, that's not going to help me in my discipleship. Let that ego subside and let your focus be on your relationship with the Guru, Master, Swami. And as Swami trained us, in many, many different ways. I remember one time, this was before computers, I was typing a letter. I was answering letters in the office that people were writing, and I was never a very good typist. And the letter had many, many mistakes, and there was this thing called whiteout, and you did it, and then you typed over. And my letters sort of looked like cake frosting, because there was so much whiteout, and then there was little bitty letters on them. And Swami just happened to be walking by, and he looked at that, and he looked at me, and he said, "You can't send that letter out." And and I tried to go slowly so we get the right letters at that point. But I'm better now. I am. But it just was always looking for how we could take the next step forward, engaging us, respecting us. My God, when we all came, my generation, we knew nothing. We were just raw disciples. We knew, but he respected each one of us and tried to make us feel that we had something of value in a way that no one in my life had ever made me feel. And I was fortunate to have a loving, supportive family, but the way Swamiji made you feel was, you are so much more than you know, and you will know it one day. And it was just, it made you believe in your own potential. And it was the greatest gift anyone could give to you. And in doing that, he trained a whole generation of people. Yesterday at service, Sagar was talking about how Jaya had trained him and had worked with him. It goes on and on and on. But it isn't like, well, our generation has the goods. All we have is our discipleship. And that's what we try to share with you. That's how the people, I know our dear friend Pranaba works with all the people in the heads in the Sangha office, trying to train them, trying to show them how to make the right decisions. Atman works with people in the community management and development, how to make the right decisions in different areas, different kinds of decisions, but all rooted in attunement. And that's how Ananda will move forward, through making decisions rooted in attunement, respecting people's individuality, and letting them know that their life choices are the ones that God has guided them towards to fulfill their own destiny, and not making anybody feel special or you're better than anyone. That was a brilliant thing he did. He made everyone feel special. Everyone feel that they had something of great value, but not in a competitive. In the world, we feel our value is defined by competition with others. I'm better than them, they're better than me. That's not the way of discipleship. Discipleship is about, we are all God's children, and we are all equally dear to him. I'll just close with this story, and then we can have questions. But some of you have heard it, not all of you. Many years ago, there was a woman who lived here. She moved away a long time ago, but she had a dream. And she told Swami, it was a very profound dream, and it made a very deep impression on her, a superconscious dream. And she told Swami about it. And in the dream, it took place on one of the hillsides at Ananda. And Swami was there. He was obviously leading some kind of a big gathering, but he was dressed as in the garb of an ancient Hebrew priest. So they would wear breastplates, metal breastplates, that had, like the Navratnam bangle, they had the 9 different gemstones on them. And so he was wearing that, and he was presiding. And there were little circles gathered of maybe 8 to 10 people, circles holding hands all over this big meadow, and each little group was chanting. And then in the middle of a chant, from time to time, someone would raise, they were holding hands, but someone would raise their hands like that, and everyone knew that they were liberated. And no one was jealous, no one, not why them, not me, but they knew their time would come. And this girl told Swami this dream, and he said that was a true dream. That's what it's like. Everyone's time will come. And by cheering on the efforts of our Guru Bhais, it accelerates the process. And so, just as I started off talking about how you could feel, even though I never saw Jyotish and Swamiji together that much, because Swami was either teaching or writing. I'm sure they met from time to time, but there was an invisible bond of attunement that I could sense from the very beginning. And is Swami not doing that anymore? Of course he is. Of course that invisible bond of attunement is there for each one of us if we open our hearts in discipleship and do and respect the advice that people give us, not think we know what's best, I'll do this, but I won't do that. That's very self-destructive thinking. So that guidance, that trained in divine love, it goes on from lifetime to lifetime until I'm going to write a blog about it tomorrow. Just as Lahiri met Babaji, and Babaji said to him, "Don't you remember me?" And Lahiri is a little bit confused. "No, sir." And then Babaji touches him. "I remember. You are my beloved Guru." And so let's remember Master, Swami, your Guru Bhais. We're all being trained in divine love, and it goes on until we're able to lift our hands and say, "I am free." Now, where's Jonica? He always asks the first question. Yay, he's got it. No, if you don't have one, it's okay. I really put you on the spot.
Hello. Hello. Welcome, Living Disciples. Your talk was a lot about guidance, and it had me thinking, a lot of times we know what the guidance is, but we might not have the self-control yet to follow through on it. So do you have any tips for maybe how to develop that and what to do when that's the case?
Yeah, that's a very perceptive question. In fact, one time someone went to Swami and said basically, "It's so hard to know what to do." Swami said, "No, it isn't. You know what to do. You just aren't ready to do it yet." And so most of the time we do know, and we really don't need much guidance. We know, we resonate with Swami indirectly saying what's right because we know what's right. But how to get ourselves to do it? It's persistence. I would say largely it's persistence, and you just keep working at it with whatever tools you have: meditation, affirmation, focusing the mind on some positive opposite of the quality that you're trying to overcome. All of these are tools, but basically what I think it is that you just keep magnetizing. You keep the energy flow going, and that magnetizes both your own consciousness moving in the right direction, but it also magnetizes the grace of God and the Guru who are inside of you to be able to work with that flow of energy because they won't negate your negativity, but they will work with your positive attunement.
And to quote Lahiri, doing, one day done. And, if it were easy to change yourself, we'd all be in a higher realm already, but it's not easy. And sometimes things pop up from some karmic tendency that you thought, my God, where'd that come from? I didn't know I had to deal with, that, kind of whatever it might be. And yet, as Jyotish was saying, persistence and just, as Master said to Swamiji, I don't ask you to overcome temptation, I just ask you to resist it. And so if we can at least resist, hold out as long as you can against the tendency to be lazy or not meditate well or whatever it might be, you just resist as long as you can, and then if you fall flat, then you pick it up again. But it's really, part of the process of liberation is just, it's like, there used to be those performers that would have all these plates spinning in the air on poles, and then one would slow down and you have to spin the other one. Well, it's like there's so much old karma, grooves in the brain, and we just have to say, I will work on this, but I will not let these things define me. And that's very important. Maybe I have a tendency to be lazy or to bend the truth or not be totally honest financially, whatever it might be. But if we can just say, I'm working on these things, but it is not who I am. Who I am is a child of God. And it's beautiful to watch over the years to see people who have been at Ananda and been on this path for a long time, and how they just get more and more transparent. One time, Jyotish described Swamiji, he said, he's like a translucent bubble. First you blow and all the color, you blow it out and it forms and there are all the colors, but then it starts rising and it expands and then finally it pops. And that's the way we are. It's like at first we're kind of really formed and this is who I am, my little ego. But then through the grace of Guru, it becomes thinner, the veil between us and God becomes thinner until finally there's no veil left.
Devi touched on something, but I want to make it a little bit more explicit. Our problems do not define us. And what defines us is our soul. I'll tell a very specific story and an example. There's a woman we know, a good friend of ours, and she was a social drinker. She'd go to parties and have cocktails and so on, and she enjoyed it. And as she came on the path, she was still drinking some, and it kind of bothered her a little bit. And she went to Swami and said, Swami, I have this habit, and frankly, Swami, I kind of enjoy it, and but I know that it's not good. And Swami said to her, he said, first of all, understand that drinking alcohol is tamasic. It will pull your energy down. But always remember that you are not your habit patterns. It's just a habit pattern. And do not identify yourself as a drinker. Just say, I have a habit pattern of drinking that you can let go because it's not helpful to you. She said from that moment on, she never took another drink, never wanted to take another drink, because either it was the words that he said or the grace, the love, the acceptance that he gave to her, that there wasn't even a shadow of rejection of her because of this problem. And I say this in part because we have to work with ourselves that way. Many times we have a problem. Don't judge yourself for the problem, and don't identify yourself as a problem or a person who is that kind of a person. You're not that kind of a person. It's all just a little vortex of energy that's locked up in this habit pattern. And if you keep working on it persistently, and for each person For some, affirmations work, others don't. It's like everybody has to find their own course, but we have lots of techniques, but the main thing is to keep working in the upward direction, and that will draw the grace to allow the other things just to fall away. Honestly, Kriya Yoga, that's why Lahiri said Kriya is the cure for everything, because that upward flow of energy untangles those samskars. And yes, there may be some particular thing that is difficult and you have to work on. Just stay at it in an upward direction. Okay, another question.
Thank you. So,
Stand up.
Stand
It's
up.
easier for people to hear.
Thank you. In working with groups, not so much with yourself, but I mean, you're going to be part of that group. I'm thinking in particular about how can, I guess if I can sum it all up, do you go by majority rule? Or right, or is if you've got a vision and the group doesn't apply with that vision, I'm just trying to sort out like how best to work when you're with a group of people and making those, and how to work with them to either share your vision or create unity around a specific topic.
See what Swami said about the best form of government.
Yeah, one time, well, we'll get into a much more substantive answer, but I came from a kind of a liberal background, in fact, quite a liberal background. And so one time Swami was talking quite strongly about the dangers and ills of communism, and riled me up a little bit inside. And so anyway, at one point, after he stopped, I kind of raised my hand and I said, yeah, you're right. Democracy is the best form of government. He said, no, it isn't. Democracy is a lousy form of government. It's
Because the people don't know what's right.
Yeah, people don't know what's right. It's just the best form of government that we can implement at this time. He said the real right form of government is the enlightened king, the Krishna, who knows Dharma, knows the rightness, and people follow that. So, yes, majority should rule, but it's a majority of one. It's God's will, and our job is to get in tune with that. So now coming back to working with groups, first of all, don't assume that you're the only one that knows God's will. As C.S. Lewis said, many people feel that they would like to serve God, generally in an advisory role. And so don't assume that you're the only one who knows God's will. In a group, you should all be working to find a common vision, but by asking what is trying to happen. And if you can get the group energy around that, and you have to allow real participation from the people in the group to self-define that. For many, many years, we had in the Sangha office what we called sticky note meetings. And so we would have a meeting, everybody got a yellow sticky note pad, and you start out by saying, okay, write down every idea you have for how to, for what we should do in the Sangha office in this coming year. And so everybody got to write down every possible idea. Then you put them up on the wall, and then you kind of get them into categories.
And no, you couldn't criticize anybody.
You couldn't criticize anybody's ideas, and you couldn't try to sell your ideas. You couldn't get up there and say, we need a new parking lot. And the reason we need a new parking lot is, no, you just, a new parking lot. That's your sticky note. So you can't sell and you can't criticize. Gradually, all the ideas get out. What that allows is a sense among the group that they've been heard. Their thoughts have been heard. They're not being dictated to. Then there are ways to collect them into logical groupings, and then as a group decide what ones we actually want to work on. But you have to have group participation, but the group participation has to be directed toward a vision of what is the best for everything, what is the best for what we're trying to accomplish. And so there's a real art form to it, but it's basically, you also don't want to just, until people are magnetized, you don't want to just take a vote on what should our vision be. Once you've gone through this process, and there's actually a way that people can vote on what ideas they want to actually implement. And that's helpful, but you've got to work together to create a real vision. But working with a group energy is an art form.
And I remember in the very early years we had a village council, which we still have now, and I was on it. And whenever a decision came and we would discuss it, we would ask the question, what's trying to happen here? Not what do I want, what do you want? And if we could, I don't think it's the same anymore. I don't know. I never go to those meetings. But if we didn't have unanimity, we knew we hadn't found the right solution. So we waited till there was unanimity, and then we thought, okay, that's the right way to go. It was beautiful. And one time there was a woman who she was very sincere, but she had the bad karma. She just couldn't get along with anybody. And she came to Swami. We were there one time, and she was crying, and she said, Swami, aren't I in tune? And he said, attunement is harmony. And so that's really one of the principles in working with a group. Find harmony. If there isn't harmony, you haven't come up with the right decision yet, the right solution. And then when everyone says, aha, then that's the right thing. It's very creative.
Yeah.
Okay,
Other
well maybe
one or two more. There's a question over there.
So this has actually been on my mind for a while, but since there's pretty much everyone here, I'm sure we've all noticed that there hasn't been a whole lot of music or books written since Swami left his body. I guess I shouldn't speak for books, but for music. And Swami always was recommending us to, to practice our intuition and to be artists with our lives, right? And so I see a lot of that in a lot of different areas. A lot of creativity is going into the work we're doing. But I guess I wonder if you could speak to how you see, the creative works of Ananda as we move forward into even the next generation and even the next beyond that. Do you see that, people will come forward and there will be more creative periods? Do you see that, because I think to a lot of us, we see a complete roadmap to moksha. There's no missing parts, right? So it's not like there's anything needed. But at the same time, we all have our individual connection to spirit and can be channels for new and creative things. So I guess I'm wondering how you see that.
You're speaking particularly of music.
As we go forward. Music and writing, but yeah, I guess if we could just start with music, because, it seems to me there are those few outliers of songs that individuals that aren't Swami have created that are maintained to this day. But yeah.
Okay, I'll answer that. First of all, let's start with writing. How many here have written something
that's been published?
That's been published either in book form or on the internet? Stand up.
Since Swami passed.
Yeah, since Swami passed. So I would say that there isn't a big blockage for writing. How about the visual arts? Are there any painters or Photographers or anybody like that in the room, stand up, please. No blockage there that I can see. So music, how many people have composed something since Swami died? Stand up. I'll stand up. So fewer, but quite a few. So I don't think the blockage is in the creativity. But if you're asking the question, should Ananda be a public forum for everybody's creativity, then I would say no way. We shouldn't have to feel that simply because somebody has done something that we have to publish it, or we have to hang it on a wall, or we have to play it at a Sunday service. But the creativity should be constantly going on, individually and as groups. We really need to encourage that. So let's just be clear about, because with music in particular, this is what comes up. And people have left Ananda basically because they've composed music that we've refused to play in public concerts during Spiritual Renewal Week or other times. So it's the public performance, and we want to have music, and partly that's why we've encouraged people to have concerts in their homes or concerts at the Living Wisdom Center. So go for it. But if you're going to compose or paint or write, try to make it in tune and inspirational, because everything we do is and should be an act of discipleship.
And further, we should probably get Ramesh and Bhagavati up here to talk, but we'll channel them. But, just as none of us would ever think of, hey, I know a new way to do Kriya. Let me get up and explain it to everybody else. It would be foolish and presumptuous. And one time this person who was a musician and wrote music, he came to Swami and asked that same question. And he said, you know how it is, Swami, you just got to write the music. And Swami said, if I never wrote another piece of music in my life, I could care less. My music is just a flow of divine inspiration that I feel coming from God and Guru. And so that's why, and I don't think any of us are capable of writing that kind of music. Yes, many of us have written books and will write books, but are they on the level of the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, of the new path? No way near. And yet we do write, but just knowing what the place of those books are. And so Swami's music comes from a place of deep attunement with God and Guru, and it's more than music, it's a carrier wave for his consciousness. And what he said was, if you want to know me, listen to my music. If we want to continue having Swami's presence in Ananda into futurity, we listen to his music. So
it's vibrational, but just to re-emphasize, be creative, period, and do the best you can to whatever creativity is flowing through you to make it an act of discipleship and an act of attunement. And don't expect that simply because you've produced something that Ananda has an obligation to display it.
And I'm just looking at the different sections in this room of friends and Gurubhais. The creativity I see in what Narayana and Dharma Devi are doing with crystal clarity. Amazing, the creativity going into that. What the accountants are doing to make us being able to pay our rent more efficiently. Amazing what you're doing. What Panduranga did, creating this temple. Amazing.
And musically.
What Gitabai did in those capturing the stories of Ananda music. I mean, that's a legacy that is invaluable. And I could go, what Karuna and her staff are doing to support the people who need physical support in the community. Amazing, creative. So creativity is part of the fabric of Ananda. I could go around in every single section of the room and talk about this, but that's what keeps Ananda alive. It isn't like, well, okay, this is how we always did it, and we'll always do it that way, and that just, the energy drains down and dwindles down until there's nothing. But how can I do this in a different way? How can I do living discipleship so it isn't just the same year after year after year? And that's what we do, and it's beautiful to watch.
Okay, one final question, if there is one. Oh, here's a question right here.
We place the people in all over the room, so you'd have to do a lot of walking.
Yeah, he's got a certain number of steps he has to get every day.
He made it. Matthew.
Well, I think as we are now into the second week of our Living Discipleship program, we can all feel our relationships deepening and just this magnetism that's growing within that. It's now we're creating kind of our own mini community. Exactly. And so all these roles are being played and we're all just having so much fun. But I know as I get out of the program, I'm very structured and I love to have that. But I guess, how can we keep that momentum that is building with this program?
That's a wonderful
and really
question.
take that with us as we head into kind of that next chapter?
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, what you're experiencing there, try to feel beneath what the vibrational, not the form that it's expressed in, not this group of people, but the harmony, the group sadhana, the group attunement, the friendship, the openness, the support, all of those things, and then try to apply that in the new form, in the new circumstances. The program is special because very few times in our life do we have a long period like this that is directed specifically on attunement to our higher values, to our path, to supporting each other. It's really special, but you won't be able to continue it, but you can continue the friendships, you can continue the vibration, and you can renew that pulling back and dedicating by doing seclusions every year. That's really, for Devi and me, the way that we get renewed the most deeply is to take seclusion and just pull back from everything and focus on God. And here you've got a month of doing that with group support. You're not going to get that again very easily. So clutch onto it while you have it. But you can get seclusions every year, and of course, group support for sadhana and everything else.
And remember, even though you may not, all of you in the program and all of us here, may not feel like you're changing, you are changing, and those changes are permanent. So it isn't like, you meditate for a month, long hours every day, and then, okay, now I can't meditate that much, I have to, all these other demands in my life, and I lost that. You don't lose it, it's with you. And it changes you. It's like Christ said, spiritual life is like yeast leavening in bread. And the Living Discipleship program is like leavening in your soul. And it will continue to rise and continue to change you. You can use it as a point of reference, but you won't lose it. The lyrics from that one song, The Hill That Was Tara, every effort we spend brings more light in the end. And so it's cumulative. This may be a highlight in your life, and I expect it will be, but it doesn't mean that that highlight will light your steps forward into the future, so it's not lost.
Okay, so.
And I just want to take a moment, and I'm going to just honor one of our great, great people, Peter and Patricia. Please stand and let us send you our love for all you do for all of us every day, unconditionally. Thank you so much. God bless you. Let's just chant Om and send Peter and Patricia.
They carry a heavy load.
They carry a very heavy load.
Okay, thank you, friends.
Shall we end with a song? Okay.
Let's do Many Hands Make a Miracle.
Okay. I was going to say the hill that was Tara, but that's maybe more complicated. Okay,
Yeah.
Many hands make a miracle.
Many hands make a miracle.
Your face said it all.
Oh, okay, well, many hands?
Yeah,
Many
everybody
hands.
can join in
Okay.
more easily.
Many hands.
Yeah.
We have enough melody.